Marcus Carlson is here.
Hi there, Melissa. Hi there, everyone. We're going to start the business update with a look at the duo that's been put in charge of the French economy. Pierre Moscovici got the sack as finance minister when the government reshuffle was outlined earlier here in France. That job was instead given to Michel Sapin at the right of that screen, a close ally of President Hollande. He'll be working with Arnaud Montebourg, this gentleman right here, who was named economy minister. The question is whether there'll be a dynamic duo or an odd couple, and Delano de Souza takes a closer look at that.
Change is on its way to the French Ministry of Economy and Finance. Arnaud Montebourg has been promoted to the Minister of Economy, while former Labour Minister Michel Sapin will take over finance. Prior to the reshuffle, Montebourg was France's Minister for Industrial Renewal. He's become known for his attacks on big business and has criticised the EU for stifling growth. He blocked Yahoo's takeover bid of French video-sharing website Dailymotion. His expanded role will also cover industry and the digital economy, giving him a bigger say on policy decisions. While international investors have expressed caution about his appointment, they say it's unlikely the newly appointed Prime Minister will give him a free hand.
At the end of the day, I think that Manuel Valls is going to be the one calling the shots, and that will probably fix the coordination issues between the two new finance minister and economy minister. Michel
Sapin is a François Hollande loyalist and friend. The two men attended one of France's most prestigious graduate schools together. Sapin briefly held the finance ministry portfolio in the 90s under former socialist president François Mitterrand. With choosing Sapin, Hollande has picked someone he trusts to fight France's battles in Brussels. Just this week, the president hinted that France needed more time to get its public finances in order. The reaction from Brussels has been tepid at best. Analysts are concerned the management styles, generational and policy differences between Sapin and Montebourg may prove confrontational inside the cabinet.
Let's move on now. There's little sign that the biggest strike in the history of the German airline Lufthansa will end early. Pilots are staging a 3-day walkout to protest against plans to scrap an early retirement scheme. Lufthansa has already been forced to ground hundreds of flights, and it expects 3,800 cancellations altogether through Friday. Lufthansa management says there'll be no further talks while the strike continues.
Based on past history, Lufthansa has come to a rather conciliatory approach in its union negotiations, but it can't really afford to do that. It needs to make permanent cost savings. Pilots are amongst the highest cost elements of the labour force for an airline, and when Lufthansa is competing against low-cost airlines in Europe and lower cost-base airlines from, for example, the Gulf and Asia, it has to do something to shift its own cost base for the future.
And if we stay in Germany, Angela Merkel's cabinet has agreed to introduce a national minimum wage at €8.50 per hour. Merkel herself has previously expressed concerns that a minimum pay level would put pressure on hiring in Germany, but it was a key requirement for the Social Democratic Party to enter into a coalition with her. The German parliament also needs to give the green light before the minimum wage becomes reality. If it does, the new wage is set to come into effect from 2015. Let's take a closer look at the stock markets next, and we've seen some choppy trading over in the United States this session. We saw stock markets trading higher earlier on the news that the US private sector added 191,000 jobs in March. Since, though, we've seen the Dow Jones and the Nasdaq come down somewhat, whereas the S&P 500 is still in positive territory. Now, the hopes for the US economy that was provided by that payrolls report from the private sector also spread to Europe on Wednesday. This side of the Atlantic, we saw the stock market indices close above the flat line, not by much though when it comes to the FTSE 100 in London and the CAC 40 in Paris. Let's move on to some other news that we're keeping an eye on for you. The European Commission is punishing Goldman Sachs and the world's top makers of high-voltage cables. The Commission says the American bank and 8 Asian and European companies ran a cartel for almost 10 years. The aim had been to divide the market between them. Altogether, they are now being ordered to pay €302 million. The global recovery remains too slow and it's still facing multiple threats. That's according to the head of the International Monetary Fund, Christine Lagarde, as she spoke in Washington earlier. She says the standoff over Ukraine is among the risks. She also called on the European Central Bank to take action to stimulate the Eurozone economy. That's ahead of an ECB meeting on Thursday. And the United States and the European Union have pledged to help Ukraine become less dependent on Russian energy. In a thinly veiled jab at Russia, US Secretary of State John Kerry said no nation should use energy as a political weapon. It comes after Russia's Gazprom hiked up the price of gas exports to Ukraine by more than 40% on Tuesday. The US and EU say they'll work on bringing natural gas to Ukraine from Poland and Hungary, as well as Slovakia. All right, I'm going to finish up with a question for you. When do you have enough money to be classed as rich? Is it when you own a yacht or a mansion, or is it when you just have a big old bank account? Well, according to a survey that's out today, the answer is when you have £10 million. The wealth advisory firm Oracle Capital Group quizzed 500 affluent individuals in Britain, and 55% of them thought that you needed £10 million sterling, which is around 12 million euros. That's not enough for some, though. A fifth of those who were asked said that you need £100 million. OK, that is the business news for now. I'm not really sure